What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Professional Picks Survivor video. After a couple casualties in week 3, we're on to week 4, and let's take a look to see who's on the board. Look at the 9 most favorite teams here. It's some pretty good dispersion here. More teams favored by more than a field goal this week, so pretty easy to fill out the list, even with the Bills favored by more than 2 touchdowns here, and everything in between. A lot of great picks. A lot of new faces, couple old ones. Let's see what we like and what we want to avoid this week in NFL Week 4. Talking about the first of a few games I'm going to proceed with caution with here. Number 1 being the Rams at home against the Colts here. I was a little bit surprised to see the spread of -4.5 for the Rams. I really think they're one of the better teams in the NFC. I really respect the talent they have on both sides of the football here. But if you've been paying attention to the NFL this season, you know that the Colts have been absolutely balling out. They're 3-0. Granted, they haven't played anyone super legitimate yet, certainly not to the caliber of the Rams, but they're putting up 30, 40 points with ease every game. Jonathan Taylor is looking like the best running back in football right now, and the Colts have a ton of weapons on offense here. The Rams certainly have proven in the past with this team, obviously winning a Super Bowl with Matt Stafford and even making it to the NFC Championship last year, and the Colts have not proven it yet. This is going to be a prove-it game on the road for the Colts. I don't expect the Colts to step up to the test and beat the Rams, especially when the Rams are coming off a tough loss against the Super Bowl champion Eagles this last week. But when you're looking as good as the Colts have been looking, you do not want to be going up against that in Survivor. And simply by the eyeball test, I'm going to stick away from any game the Colts are playing because that offense right now is just humming and something you don't want to come up on the wrong side of in a Survivor week. Another game that's intriguing is the Patriots coming off a loss there to the Steelers 21-14 with the Panthers hosting in Gillette, the Panthers visiting in Gillette after a 30-0 rout of their division rivals, the Falcons. A little bit odd to me that, again, a team like the Patriots favored by 4.5 points, but when you take a closer look at the box score and you were watching that actual Patriots game, they definitely outplayed the Steelers, but they kept shooting themselves in the foot with 5 turnovers, most of them fumbles from that Patriots team that really hindered their ability to win that game. I don't hate the Patriots this game, but something certainly to perceive a caution with is they're still an unproven team. Young guys all around. Second-year quarterback Drake May, Travion Henderson, the rookie running back, kind of splitting carries and probably getting more and more of the lion's share as the other veteran backs continue to put the ball on the ground. Wide receivers still kind of getting into the mix and understanding their place here. So a lot of question marks with the Patriots team, but I think the talent is there in a lot of places, especially on offense. It's just they haven't pieced it together yet. The Panthers, I think, are a better team than people give them credit for. Although they're not a great team, but I think that 30-0 win showed people that this Panthers team actually, has some talent and is willing to go out there and play. So that concerns me just a little bit. I think this caution is more so with my lack of trust in the Patriots having, betting big on them in week 1 against the Raiders and being let down, and then watching their performance in week 3 with all those turnovers. There's certainly a lot of reason to have caution with this Patriots team, and I think this week is no different. Finally here, you don't often get a team that's favored by 7 points with the proceed with caution, but it's exactly where the Texans find themselves in week 4 here, hosting their divisional rivals, the Tennessee Titans. Neither of these teams have a win yet this season, so it's odd you get 2 0-3 teams, and one of them's favored by 7 points, but that is really because the Titans have looked really poor all year long. They were able to muster up 20-plus points against the Colts here in week 3, but they still let up 40 points against, again, a pretty high-powered offense there this year. But bottom line, this Titans team has not been able to generate anything on offense, and despite saying that, they face a team, the Texans, that I'm pretty sure there is no offense in the league that has scored fewer points than this Texans offense. So again, really peculiar for them to be favored by 7 points. Their offense has really, really struggled. Their offensive line is not the stalwart that it used to be. They don't have a ton of depth at wide receiver anymore. Nico Collins can only do so much for this wide receiver core, But at the end of the day, too, C.J. Stroud has just not looked like he did in his rookie campaign, continuing his sophomore slump into his third season. And it's really hard to put trust in this Texans team with him at the helm of this offense, really looking incompetent at times. Certainly he's not getting much help from the run game. But, again, certainly behind a poor offensive line. But you would expect C.J. Stroud to be playing better than he's been. And it's been really tough for me to watch this Texans team the last few weeks. Continuously thinking them to step up because, they do have such a great defense and the offense has to do just so minimal for them to win games. And still they found themselves 0-3 to start this season. It's hard for me to believe the Titans can really win any game, but it's going to happen at some point. This Texans team keeps giving opponents opportunities to beat them simply because they refuse to put points on the board, and they have had a penchant to commit turnovers this year too. Something to be worrisome about, especially when you're playing against a divisional opponent that seems to be making steps in the right directions for the Titans. I was just more pleased to see some points get put on the board rather than another win or a win in their column yet. So I think Titans are trending the right direction. I don't see much positive trend for the Texans, so something certainly to be cautious of as well. For the second straight week, and probably a common theme, the Bills are the best pick here. I'm not going to go too much into this. These guys are coming off a long week after a win Thursday night against the Dolphins. They're going up against the Saints that just surrendered 40-plus points to the Seahawks on the road. Spencer Rattler, plenty of turnovers and inability to move the ball downfield. I think they even put in Tyler Shaw at the end of that game. It doesn't really matter who's at quarterback for the Saints. The Bills should roll here as they have a much more superior offense, really outflanking the Saints in all facets of the game. And again, I think I said in the beginning of this series in week 1 that I thought the Saints were going to be the worst team in football. Now, Titans have given them a run for their money there, but I think it's still a pretty good bet, and this Saints team is really struggling, and I don't know how they can compete with a team like the Bills, especially when the Bills are going to be coming off of a few extra days of rest as well. Love the Bills here, and honestly, probably one of the best times to take them. They have starting to get a little bit tougher schedule coming up here, and so we'll take a look in a few minutes. But it's not more of a guarantee in football than a 94% chance to win, and you usually just take those wins when you can get them. Best value here also happens to be a pick that is cautionary, and that is the Texans. It's not often you're going to get a team that's 0-3, a winless team, a team that is the lowest in the NFL in points scored, favored by a touchdown at home. There's just tremendous value here. I don't think you're going to see the Texans favored by this much again this season, unless they're going up against a real off-script scenario where a team loses their starting quarterback days before and has to get a rental guy. This Texans team simply is not producing on offense, and that's what makes them so valuable. Is they're playing one of the few opponents this season that they can actually outflank offensively. Potentially, we'll see in the Titans. I'm still very cautious about it. Still think twice about taking them, but you cannot deny the value that comes with this Texans pick because it's starting to come to the point where we're accepting the Texans are not a playoff team and they're actually a well below average team this year. And I just don't think there's going to be many scenarios where they're favored by any points, let alone 7 here. So tremendous value for the Texans is relatively to their team's performance. And more so about the team that they're playing in Tennessee that gives this pick so much value. Couple other good value plays are Patriots and 49ers both favored by 4.5. I already talked about the Patriots game a little bit. I think they had 5 turnovers in that game and still managed to keep it pretty close to the Steelers team. That's a really good defense. If they can cut back on the turnovers, if they can win the turnover battle this game or just be neutral, I think they'll be fine. This Panthers defense is pretty lackadaisical. I think pass rush doesn't really get home. Give Drake May a lot of time to pick apart a poor secondary for the Panthers. I think, again, the key for the Patriots here is going to be the turnover battle, and I like the way they look actually, getting Hunter Henry a little bit more involved in the mix there, Travion Henderson out of the backfield. I think the Patriots team will be fine this game against the Panthers, but still they have not proven consistency yet, which is the big concern in this game. 49ers here, not often you see a team with a backup quarterback, Mac Jones, who just led the Niners to a 1-point win against the Cardinals in Week 3. They're hosting the Jags, who came up victorious against the Texans in a game that seemed like neither team actually wanted to win. Just like his divisional counterpart in C.J. Stroud, Trevor Lawrence is not really taking steps in the right direction this year and regressing that offense from last season, and really disappointing a lot of the fans there that have been rooting for this team and this offense to take another leap up under first-year head coach Liam Cohen. Jags really, again, haven't been able to put together an offense. The 49ers, despite all the injuries they continue to sustain, seems like a yearly thing for those guys. They continue to find ways to win. I believe they're 3-0 here now after a gritty win against the Cardinals, and they host the Jaguars here in a very winnable game where they're, again, favored by 4.5 points. You can see a lot of Christian McCaffrey, Ricky Pearsall, wide receiver, stepping up in the absence of a lot of other people like George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings. Between those two guys that I mentioned, Pearsall and CMC, the 49ers offense has been able to do enough to win, and really their defense has stepped up, knowing that so much more weight is being put upon their shoulders given the offensive production or lack thereof. I think this defense for the Niners is good enough to keep stifling the Jags offense like other defenses have been doing this year, and I think the 49ers can continue their momentum and get a win here, but it's not my favorite pick, but it cannot be denied the value here. That, the 49ers, even with a backup quarterback, can be 4.5-point favorites at home against the Jags. Don't love the pick, but certainly value. You look at the schedule here, and let's just keep with the 49ers that I just spoke about here. You're not going to be taking them really anytime soon, not on the road, especially with the backup quarterback. You're not taking them. The Falcons at home, you can maybe make the debate yourself. I don't really like them on the road against the Texans or the Giants, even with their lack of strength, just because the questions at quarterback are so there for the 49ers. It's only until Week 12 you get a home game against the Panthers where you feel pretty confident. So that's where the relative value comes in. For the Patriots there, couple road games against, again, the two bottom teams in the league, in my opinion, with the Saints and the Titans, but probably not taking them much more often this year. And then the best value is the Texans. I really don't know when you're taking them anytime soon. Not against the Ravens, not against the Seahawks or the Niners or Denver. You're talking about all playoff teams here. They just lost to Jacksonville in Week 3. I can't imagine you'd love to take them again in Week 10. On the road against the divisional opponent in Week 11, you just saw the Falcons fall into that trap against the Panthers this week. Buffalo, Colts. There's no other opportunity that I'm really standing here and saying, oh, wow, I can't wait to take the Texans. They might be favored in only that game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and then the following week probably close to a pick'em game against the Titans, just given the home field advantage swing there. Just nothing really going for the Texans for the rest of the season. I think it's a great time to take them, but again, I don't love the pick given the eyeball test the Texans have been this year. It scares the hell out of me, but again, just tremendous value given the fact that you're really not going to take them any other time this season. And then the Patriots and Niners too. Slim pickings as they get their pick of the litter of the bottom three teams with the Panthers, the Saints, and the Titans at some point. Other picks I want to talk about, the Lions game. Have not seen the Lions on Monday Night Football at the time of this recording, but the Browns got away with a nice one at home against the Packers. Can't imagine lightning strikes twice in back-to-back weeks against playoff caliber divisional opponents. If Monday night's game goes as I suspect, the Lions drop that one to the Ravens, who are just such a complete team offensively, but should be a thrilling game. The Lions should bounce back here and get a win against a very beatable opponent in the Browns, who just had really nothing going for them on offense. Broncos is a great time to take them, coming off a really tough loss and a really great game they played against the Chargers. The Bengals, with Jake Browning backing up Joe Burrow throughout his injury, and he'll be out. Joe Burrow will be out for the foreseeable future with that toe injury. It's a great time to take the Broncos with how great their defense is. Again, looking for a bounce-back win at home after a tough loss. And the Bengals with Jake Browning and just the offense's continued struggles with the turnover battle. again, against a defense as formidable as this Broncos unit, have a really hard time seeing Browning and the Bengals figure it out here on the road. Love the Broncos this week in this situation here. This would be the next week's Sunday Night Football game with the Micah Parsons games, Packers and Micah Parsons heading back to Dallas. You saw the Cowboys have no answer for the Bears offense. Most teams in this league, the Packers included, are able to have answers for the Bears offense. It's sad to see when a defense unit can't, like the Cowboys, and that just goes to show you how weak this defense unit is in Dallas. I expect the Packers, again, looking to come off a really tough loss against the Browns here, to find some breathing room against a really light, cushy defense in the Cowboys, to use all the weapons the Packers have on offense to start lighting up the scoreboard and pretty much blowing out the Cowboys, if I had to guess. Packers defense has been playing really good football this year too. I think the Cowboys offense, especially with CeeDee Lamb, coming up a little bit lame and gimpy with that ankle injury that occurred in the beginning of the game against the Bears. I think a really good opportunity for the Packers to bounce back after that Browns game and light up the scoreboard on Sunday Night Football in prime time. One more game, or maybe two more games that I got to cover. Chargers here on the road against the Giants. Giants here might be now the Cam Scatterbo era in New York, but I don't know if his presence alone is going to be enough to take on the Chargers, who have looked really good this season. 3-0, looking to continue to have a stranglehold on that division. You're seeing such great productivity from the offense. Now that Quentin Johnson, former first-round pick, has really started to figure it out, and Keenan Allen, in his return to San Diego or Los Angeles here, has made this offense really, really scary. Even when Khalil Mack, their star defensive player, is out, Joey Bosa playing football in Buffalo now, this defense, and led by Derwin James, is still looking very scary. Giants are going to continue to have their struggles on offense just by the lack of talent that's around everyone that's not named Malik Neighbors, and Russell Wilson now kind of falling into a turnover bug right now. Hard to see the Giants winning against anyone. You got to like the Chargers here, but a little cautious on the road to make it 4-0. Just seems like this offense in Los Angeles was really clicking, and I can't imagine the Giants keeping up with them. But there's something to be said about how great that Giants front four and even front seven is playing. Certainly enough to slow down even the best of offenses. Just don't know if it's going to be enough in this game. So I do like the Chargers, but always cautious about taking a road team in Survivor as well, especially against one that's going to be going against a Giants team that's growing increasingly desperate as the season goes on. That's something you don't want to go against either, again, on the road if you're the Chargers. But yeah, that's the picks here. Again, I think this week you just take the Bills. If you got this is the time to do it. They're going against the worst team in the league on a long week at home. You just don't get the gimmies like this ever in the NFL. And maybe I'm speaking too soon, but I think this is the time you take the freebie for the Bills. Everyone's got to use them. Everyone's going to use them. I think this is probably the time. A lot of value in the Texans just by the sheer fact that I don't see them being favored in most of the games they play for their foreseeable future, let alone by a touchdown favorite here at home. Only thing I don't like is going against the divisional game, and really just how poor the Texans offense have looked. Again, least amount of points scored in the league this far in this season, and really some cause for concern. So that's never what you want to see, the poorest offensive production when you're taking your survivor pick, but relatively this is the best it's going to get for this Texans team. Hosting the Titans, and so you might just close your eyes and hope you win this game if you take them. I'm strongly debating it, but haven't decided yet. I think you get some good value with the Patriots and the 49ers here at 4.5-point favorites, but even then with the Patriots, a lot of caution around them with their issues with the turnovers. A few other things to watch out for, like the Rams here. It should be a good game as they're taking on the 3-0 Colts, but Rams are going to get a bounce back win after a really tough loss against the Eagles. Colts looking to keep rolling. Probably a game I'd stay away from. I think if I were to not take the Bills and you were too afraid of the Texans here, I think the Broncos are in a really good spot here against the Bengals. I think the Lions are in a really nice spot against the Browns, depending on everything going fine against the Ravens there on Monday night. I think that's where you take that. I think you continue to try to stay away from away games. You saw some really shocking losses like the Packers and the Falcons in Week 3. I think it's just best to stay away from the away games unless you have tremendous value. Like if the Bills were on the road against the Saints, that wouldn't faze me. They'd still be favored by 10 plus points. But when you start to get into these touchdown games, it becomes a little bit more scary. So something just to keep in mind. Obviously, pick us up to you, and it's your league. But if you got any questions, reach out in the comments. And best of luck in Week 4, and can't wait to see everyone again in Week 5.